ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
भावषट्कहीनरूपनित्यसत्यमद्वयम् वाङ्मनोति गोचरं च नेति नेति भावितम् तं नमामि देवदेव रामकृष्णमीश्वरम्. One of the first or the most important things which we should know, most of us practice what are called as spiritual practices and or religious practices. We fast whenever it's time, Ekadashi and all that. We stay vigil, we perform vigils, that is we don't sleep on Shivratri. We perform pilgrimages, we do charity. And most of us, if not most of us, many of us, think that we have done whatever is to be done. Whatever is to be done. But most of us forget that these are all practices which are recommended. But they are not end in themselves. They are means for something else. And when we perform such practices, say for example, keeping a fast, vratam, mostly on that day, either we keep thinking about the food which we have not taken, or we tell other people that, look, today is my fast day. And sometimes in some homes, the grandmother who performs the fast every Saturday, the children get most of the scoldings on that day. And children say that perhaps they'll tell their mother that why don't you feed grandma so that she'll stop shouting. It remains at that practice level, and we are satisfied that we have become religious or we have become spiritual. Somebody was telling that I practice spirituality, and he was asked as to what he was doing. He said, I have my bath in the morning, early morning, and I wave lights in front of the deity and fix a few agarbattis. That is spirituality. But these practices will lead us to something. For instance, self-control, self-discipline. Self-discipline is on a particular day, I'll keep vigil, I'll keep fast. I'll do a particular thing on a day fixed. On that day, we perform or we are self-disciplined and we try to get control over ourselves. You see, two things are very basic, that is sleep and hunger. When we are hungry, we want food. And when we are when we want to sleep, when we are sleepy, if somebody stops us from sleeping, then it becomes very difficult. Somebody was telling that these days, the proportion of drugs, that is sleeping tablets, is much more than the other drugs which are being sold. The reason for this is that we want to sleep. Sleep is very important to us. Self-control, self-discipline. And most of all, it should lead us to self-understanding, Atma Bodh, to know ourselves. If this doesn't happen, if these things don't take place, if we don't progress in these lines, then it just becomes a mechanical thing. One more thing which our culture insists is that our life is not, I repeat that not, is not divided into spiritual and material, spiritual and secular. We say we perform say half an hour's meditation in the morning and half an hour in the evening. That is 1 hour. But the rest of the 23 hours, we spend as we normally do. Then we'll neither be able to do meditation, nor will our quality of life improve. So all our actions should be in tune with meditation. And when that happens, meditation improves on its own. And when the meditation improves, consequently, the quality of the life which we are leading, that also improves. These are a few things which are to be constantly remembered by a seeker. Last time we saw that we see the same world, but the way in which we see, we hear, we feel is different, because we are having a specific, unique perspective. That is the place where we are standing. We have that unique view. You may be knowing that art rooms where art is being taught, or an artist, a painter, if he is doing a painting, then he sits on a chair called as donkey stool. Suppose there are some 10 or 12 students who are learning the painting, art of painting. Then in the corner, they keep that, they make an arrangement of the still life. That is maybe a few bottles and a few flowers. So they are kept in the corner, and surrounding it, probably in a half a circle, there are about 6 or 7 stools, donkey stools, where the students sit and paint that still life from their point of view. This is what exactly happens when we interact with the world, when we sense the world. That is, we either see it or feel it through our other senses. And we, after seeing it, we perceive according to our stool, where we are standing or where we are. And what is that stool, or what is that perspective? It depends on the likes and dislikes. It depends on the obsessions and decisions which we had made, or the fixed views which we have, or the pride and prejudice of the ego. When we see a particular thing, we had a pleasant experience. So we like that experience. And we feel that every such experience should be right, should be pleasant. And in the same manner, if we see someone who is very frank, who tells out his point of view or his opinion, and that opinion or that point of view doesn't suit yours, then you don't like that person. You don't like to be with that. So that means we fix our views, something like a blinker. That is, our view is limited. And yet, we insist that our own view is the view, or the most correct view, the correct view. In which case, the mind becomes rigid. So last time we saw that we should become more open and try to understand others' point of view. When that happens, we become richer and our mind opens for the truth which we are seeking. A question arises. Why at all do we need to introspect? He said that spirituality, the first step of spirituality is introspection. Why should we look within? What is the reason behind it? Because we are unable to look within, we are facing all the problems that are there in the world. I'll give you examples. A teenager, he's very fond of a friend. He's very close to a friend. He's an intimate friend of another. Somehow or the other, they have an argument, and that argument becomes extremely serious. And the one who's arguing becomes violent on the other person and perhaps beats him up. When that happens, that means what? He comes in rage. It's only a point of view, and you are just discussing. And when discussions become arguments, then it can lead to violence. Why did that happen? Because we are not thinking of the consequences for the actions which we are involved in. Second example. A youth sees one camera, and the moment he sees the camera, he wants to buy it, and probably he takes that you can buy things in installments these days. He buys a camera in installments costing 16,000 rupees. And he shows it off to his friends. And when the friends ask him, what is the use of this camera? Because it's a very small camera. Then this youth says that it's an underwater camera. The friends ask him, will you be ever taking any photograph underwater? He had not thought about the consequences. Why? Because there is no introspections. We don't introspect. We invest some money based on market, and something happens, and then that money is lost. It is lost to us. Why? We did not make proper inquiries. These are all external things, but there is a faculty, there is a being who is doing all that, of whom we are totally unaware. Why? Because the mind, the intellect, and the ego have taken possession of our whole faculties, and we act in a somnambulistic way. That is, as if we are walking in sleep. Wherever you see, whenever there's violence, whenever there's a suicide, it shows that we are unable to understand, or we are unable to be patient with ourselves, and we don't have the process of vichara, which is so necessary for proceeding or to make us into even human beings. Somebody was telling that the man these days, what is the most important thing these days, which we all have to learn is, first of all, we have to learn to be human. We are losing our humanness. 2 years back, in United Kingdom, they introduced what is called as mindfulness as a subject in schools. The reason that they gave was that we want to introduce this mindfulness in the schools so that our children will be conscious, aware in all their actions. So the beginning of spirituality is to improve our consciousness or to increase our conscious actions. Whatever action we do, let's be aware as to what are the consequences of this particular action. What do I want to achieve through this action? These are some of the questions which we have to ask. So practices, vichara, are for, as I said, self-discipline, self-control, and self-understanding, or Atma Bodh. When we understand this and then proceed, then things will become easier. Somebody would get this thought that, don't you think it's very difficult to be conscious of each and every act of ours? Yes, it is. It is difficult because we are used most of the time to unconscious actions, or as the scientists would say, we have become automatons. We just react to a particular situation violently or otherwise. There is what is known as flight or fight. That is, either we fight or we withdraw. We do not know why we are doing this, and then it goes on and on. And at the end of, because we have only two things. We have been given energy and we have been given time. Energy is also limited. The time is also limited. And we say that when somebody is wasting, when somebody is very, very, is a spendthrift, he goes on spending money, we say that he's wasting money. But most of us are wasting our time, which is extremely limited. When we have limited time, we should make use of it. So even for our secular life, even for our survival, we require to become conscious of our acts. There is a very beautiful episode in Gandhiji's life. It was his birthday, 2nd October, and some of the journalists had gone there, and they saw Bapu doing that spinning thread on the wheel, spinning wheel. When somebody asked that, we believe that you had made a statement that with this spinning wheel, you can bring out, you had said, you can bring out revolution in our country. Probably you will be able to, the journalist said, probably you'll be able to take out one bundle of thread. How do you expect, let us say that all of us do this spinning wheel, we spin the thread. How much how can we revolutionize? Bapu said one wonderful example. In fact, he gave the wonderful reply. He said, I did not say revolution as far as financial thing is concerned. I meant there will be a transformation of the inner being. This spinning of thread is not just an activity for me. It's a meditation. When I started learning this process of spinning, every second that thread used to break. But gradually, when my mind started remaining on this act of spinning, I started having longer threads. And now, when I spin this wheel, even for 45 minutes to 1 hour, it doesn't break. Because the moment mind breaks from this activity, the thread breaks. And that's what exactly happens to all of us whenever either we are playing games. When we play games, we get distracted. That moment of distraction is enough to lose a point. And continuous being aware of that particular action will definitely help us to achieve what we want to achieve. So Bapu said, each action can become meditation. Just as spinning thread, each action, every action can become a conscious action, an action with awareness. When this awareness slowly and steadily starts increasing, then we do not have to waste more time on our actions as such. But then, since the mind becomes calm, since the mind is able to go and stick to a point, stick on a subject, stick on an activity, we will be able to turn this mind inwards. As I said last time, as we discussed last time, looking inwards doesn't mean with the eyes, but by stopping the activity of these senses, the mind can become still, and then we'll be able to see what is inside. There's a very beautiful how can this be achieved? It requires strenuous effort. So I'll give you a very small episode from Buddha's life. They used to walk always, and one particular day they started walking and they wanted to reach a place. When the first person whom they came across, Ananda, the shadow of Buddha, he asked that person that how far is this place? He said 2 kos. Actually, kos is a measurement in Hindi or in Pali. It means anywhere between 1 to 3 miles. So 2 kos, just 2 kos is there. So they walked the distance, which Ananda said, felt that it is 3 miles or 6 miles. And still it was not there. And then they came across another person. And it went on, and every person would say, it's bas do kos, bas 2 kos. When finally Ananda was rejected, he asked the Buddha, he said, what is this happening? Since morning we are hearing only 2 kos, and we are yet to reach the place. Buddha smiled and said, that's what I'm telling you. Let us walk these 2 miles. Let us start walking these 2 miles. And then maybe we'll ask somebody, and they'll say, again, boss. That is, this journey is eternal. The journey which we have undertaken, the Buddha said, is very, very long. But unless and until you take these initial steps, you'll never be able to reach. And that's what Sudhakarji has given instructions on today's WhatsApp message. Is let us start walking this path. We have collected enough information, and let's start walking this path. What are the things which stop us from being calm? Basically, it's our unnecessary involvement, too much of attachments to things, and then unnecessary dependence on our instruments called as the intellect and mind, manas. When we depend on these things, they are bound to take us, or they are bound to delay our journey. What happens when we sit for some time? I said that we should sit for maybe for 5 minutes and 10 minutes and try to see, closing our eyes, try to see, or just try to feel ourselves. It said that the mind comes and says that probably my right leg is paining. I feel like scratching my ear. All these are activities, mind you. It need not be that you are feeling, but it is the mind which is directing you to get involved in the external things so that your attention doesn't go inside. You attend to the activities outside so that you will be distracted from going within. That is why your Yoga Shastras say, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That is the vrittis which are there, which are taking you out, which are making you extrovertish. Those vrittis are to be stopped. There are 2 ways of stopping. Vasishta gives a method which is not very sudden. Yoga, the Ashtanga Yoga gives different method. Vasishta says that you try to befriend your mind. He is your friend. Intellect is your friend. Ego is your friend. But unnecessarily don't fight with these and try to control them. You try to observe these activities. But how can you observe the activities? I said again, we'll revert back. Each and every action We can take the yogic practices themselves. We are performing yogasanas, we perform pranayama. And when we are doing pranayama or when we are doing yogasana, as far as possible, try to be with the action called as that particular asana. If you are bending, then observe the body, and then you will find pleasantly you'll find that the moment you stretch, the body responds to your stretching. And the more you insist on stretching, of course, you don't cross the limit, but you go up to a particular point, then maybe try to maintain that posture for some time. And then you come back, you will find that the body starts relaxing. That is why asanas are to be performed slowly. This slowness, shanaihi, as Gita tells us, slowly and steadily, slowly and slowly. Start observing or learn to observe your body, which is very immediate to us. Learn to observe your breath, which is also very obvious, because breathing goes on unconsciously. And you can do this. They are dual. Breathing can be done consciously, and breathing can happen unconsciously, which happens to most of us most of the time. When you are doing pranayama is something different. Different in the sense the practices are there, but we become aware of our breath. We try to become aware of our breathing, which is natural. And then we start having slow and steady control. We try to slow down our breath as in pranayama, and we proceed. So take up the gross actions first, become aware of them. As we said at the beginning of this discussion, I said that 23 hours, if we are able to even become aware of 1 hour of our ordinary activity, then you'll find that your meditation will improve. And when your meditation improves, you'll find slowly and steadily your other, that is 23 hours of your life, starts improving. It becomes more and more and more aware. Yoga Vasishta, in the first Prakarana, he gives very beautiful stories about the origin of this I. It originates because the consciousness which is expansive, it contracts, it gets focused. That is, it becomes limited. The infinite conscious becomes limited. How? The Shastras as well, they gave us a lot of explanations, but they say, don't ask how. It started. Having come to this focused state, having originated the ahankara. Ahankara means I-do-ness. Ahankara also means ego. Ahankara also means pride. But that initial ahankara means I do. That is I. As we saw, that is when we sleep, when we get up in new place, initially we are not aware of the things which are going on, but we are not aware of our name, but only that I is there. So the first I, why does it start, is not explained, and it's not necessary to know. But having had that, it continues. Vasishta gives very beautiful stories. I'm not going into the story part of it because it's there. In the readings, you'll be able to listen to them. Those details are given in the readings of the book, which are there. Our Sudhakarji will tell you, and I think he's including it in the WhatsApp, our group. They say that there are three things which continue, which enhance this I. Utpatti Prakarana gives three things. First is fear. Fear of death, or fear as it is. You're afraid. And fear, as most of us know, or all of us know, is a feeling, an emotion, which was extremely necessary for our very survival. The whole organic evolution as such has depended on fear for self-preservation. Fear is the first thing. Second thing is attachment. You get attached to certain things, certain persons, certain places, certain habits. You get attached to them, and that continues that process of I. And last but not the least is, they say, Maya. Now, here comes a typical word, but we are not going to go into the technicalities. We'll understand it in a very simple manner. A child is walking, and it's a moonlit night, maybe full moonlight. And when he sees something moving, he feels that there is no ghost, but that impression of the ghost was perceived, was felt by the child. It's not there, but we feel it is there. We'll take one very common example or common experience of ours. We dream. And in this dream, we create so many things. As far as the body is concerned, it is limited to that 6x3 place on the cot. It is not moving. Probably we are tossing and turning. That's a different matter. But we are not shifting from that place, but we see mountains, we see sea, we see all the other details which are on the screen of our consciousness when we dream. From where did it come? The Shastras tell us that it's our unfinished thoughts that come in the form of dreams. But why did it come? Why did they come at all? So, but the moment, and when you are undergoing this dream, when you are seeing this dream, it's as real as you are in the external world as such, when you are awake. And probably when we are wakeful, we may wonder whether what is going on is real. But when we are dreaming, we never ever bother to ask whether it's real or not, because we don't suspect. We feel that it is very much real because it is created within. Something similar like that happens, and which is not the ya ma sa maya. That which is not is Maya. Some 8 to 10 stories are given, and they say that whoever, in fact, every now and then, Vasishtha Muni encourages Rama, encourages all of us, that with Paurusha and Prayatna, with effort, with sincere effort, consistent effort, sincere effort, continual effort, you will be able to achieve it. But we only follow that, or we only pursue that of which we are convinced. And these this study discussions, we are trying to study the essence of Yoga Vasishtha. In this discussion, all we are trying to learn is the process of being in the, or understanding this introvertishness, this antarmukhata. As I said, if our activity is extreme outside, then we'll never be able to understand what is inside. So, whenever we try to practice spirituality, try to practice antarmukhata, it is suggested that you try to curtail your external activity so that you become attentive to the internal process which is going on. It is so easily said than done. I agree there. But let us try it. Let us start doing it. And once we start doing it, we'll have other obstacles which will be there. And we should not be afraid of obstacles. They'll come. They'll come, and let them come. Because of these obstacles, we'll be able to find out new means and methods of understanding ourselves, of practicing this antarmukhata. Once we put small steps, very small steps, let's put very small steps. So when we do that, then probably we'll be able to take the or taste this taste this in small doses, and then we'll start enjoying this process or enjoying this journey within. I remember a Sufi story. It is said that one person was punished for no fault of his, and he was put in a tower which was very high. It's a story, but it has got a wonderful lesson for all of us. And it had only one window, and he could not possibly go anywhere. There was only one window of that, and that window did not have any grill. This friend, this friend was very fond of this person, and he was very sorry, and he wanted that somehow or the other I should help my friend to escape from that dungeon. So what he did was, he took a beetle. Beetle means, it's a big moth, big insect. And this insect has got two antlers, something like, kombu, as they say, this horn, something like horns, but they are actually feelers. You can see it in the insects. So on those antlers, he put small drops of honey. He tied the insect, it was quite big, with a small thread, very thin thread. And then he allowed the beetle to climb up. Since it was seeing these honey drops, it was not able to taste it, but he was able to feel it, those honey drops. It started going in the direction which is in front. It reached the top. And when the moment the friend saw this insect tied with a small thread, he removed the thread from the insect and then let it free, and then started pulling it up. To that thread was tied a slightly thicker thread. To that thicker thread, slightly thicker, still a small rope, a thinner rope. And then it went on till a very big rope, thick rope came into his hand. He tied it to a pillar inside the dungeon, and then he climbed down. Something like that we should do when we practice spirituality. Maybe in small doses. Maybe you start with 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes. For these 10 minutes, let us sit. Sit and observe, learn to observe. Initially, let us observe our body. Then we'll come to the breath. And then as and when we find that we are unable to continue the awareness of that of the body or of the breathing, you'll find that there is another activity. We'll discover there is another activity, the activity of the mind. The mind is going helter and skelter. It goes everywhere. You have become aware of that activity called mind. And when you discover this activity called mind, you have put your initial steps into spirituality, and it's not difficult. We can try it now. Let's try it now. I request you to sit quietly, close your eyes, and just listen to my instructions. Sit comfortably, keeping your spine erect, as comfortably as possible. Let us now center our body. Now, centering the body means let us be in the place where we are. For example, let us say that we are in Kodungalur. In that town of Kodungalur, let us locate our house. We are in that house. In that house, we are in one room. In that one room, I am sitting on a chair. Let me become aware of my body. By becoming aware of the body, or for becoming aware of the body, let us start from the toes of our feet. You are not moving anywhere, but you are becoming aware of your toes, your ankles, your shin and calf muscles, your knee, thighs, back, lower back, middle back, neck, fingers, wrists, forearms, elbows, biceps and the triceps, shoulder, chin, cheeks, eyes, forehead, crown of your head, back, and then the neck. Slowly open your eyes. This is the process. Now, one wonderful thing about all of us is that each one of us has to find out, has to discover what is practical for him or her. And it changes. You cannot give the same method to everybody. This method, probably it's mine, but it need not be yours. Whatever helps you, as Bapu said, whatever helps you, for Bapu it was spinning wheel, whatever helps you to increase this self-awareness, that is the method for you. And most of the time, the method which is suitable for you will be the simplest one, which you'll enjoy, which will help you. You must have discovered that during this process of listening to my instructions and following those instructions, the mind would have gone here and there. Then when it goes off, many times it slips out of our hand, but suddenly, probably you become aware of my voice or aware of your own being who says, hey, what is it that you're doing? Which is reminding you to come back to your body, to come back or uh, pay your attention on the body as such, or that particular part. This is because we have or we are trying to learn the process of self-awareness. And this self-awareness is most important. The mind has got another quality. What is that quality? It either thinks of the past, obsessed with the past, it goes on thinking about the past, things which you could have done, which you didn't do, or it goes to the future, which is uncertain, which you do not know, which you want to do, or which you want to achieve. Most of the time, it does the simple harmonic motion or goes from one, that is either the past or the future, back to the past or the future. It does this simple harmonic motion like the clock. And in between, for a very, very short time, we pass through a passage called as present. We don't become aware of the present. And unfortunately, our awareness improves only with presence or present. When we are present to the present, when we are aware of the present moment, then alone we become aware, not otherwise. When we are involved in the past, either we have, we should have done that way, regrets of the past, or dreams of the future, uncertainties of the future. What is going to happen? We are all the time seesawing between past and present, past and future, forgetting that it is the present moment which we should live. Let us conclude with one small story, Sufi story, which is also extremely beautiful. A very hard taskmaster was there. And he seldom used to speak, but at the same time, extremely serious. He had, it seems, 3 disciples. Most of the disciples used to come to him and then they would go off because he was a taskmaster. He used to give them instructions and they had to follow whatever was given. And after spending some time, the master said, tomorrow in the morning, you will ask me your doubts. Each one of you should ask me some doubts. Scared that these disciples were of their master, they were working about what should I ask? How should I ask? Because I can ask only that which I know, but at the same time, suppose my master doesn't agree and then he shouts at me, what will happen? All those things were going on throughout the night for all the 3 disciples. The time came, he came and sat under the tree and the 3 disciples were sitting in front. He looked at the first one and then he just nodded his head and asked, he made a gesture. The poor disciple, he stood up and he said, Master, what will happen? How to get rid of the past impressions which are there in my mind? This is my doubt. The master just looked at him sternly and he said, ask a question closer to home. The poor disciple didn't know. He sat down. The second disciple, he looked at him. He got up. Master, what will I achieve if I practice whatever you are telling us, teaching us diligently and continuously and sincerely? Again, the master said, ask a question closer to home. The third disciple was panicky. But then still he got up and he asked, Master, what do you mean by asking a question closer to home? It is said, for the first time that day, the master smiled. I thought you would never ask. And that's it. By asking a question closer to home means don't ask anything that is irrelevant to your life. Ask that question which will transform you. The three disciples still didn't understand what he meant. The master explained in all compassion. He said, you asked about the things of the past. They are already dead and gone. They are useless to you because those moments have gone. At the moment you are sitting, at the moment, how's your body? Is it strained or is it relaxed? You ask something about future which is yet to come. Why do you bother about the future? Ask whether what I'm listening, am I able to listen to it totally? Or am I doing the dialogue which is going on? I'm agreeing or not agreeing with the master, whatever you are hearing. Are you at the moment listening? At the moment trying to follow my instructions? These are the questions which are to be asked. And when you ask such questions, not to me, but to yourself, when you ask these questions, then you will come closer to home. Then he said one wonderful instructions. To see far, you see or try to see what is near to you, what is next to you, or which is nearest to you. Which is nearest to you? It's your body. Which is the most obvious and most important function or action which you do? Breathing. How are you breathing? Is it shallow? Is it full? When you ask such questions, then you'll transform your lives. Then you don't require even persons like me to help you. Learn how to ask questions closer to home. This is what all our scriptures, whether the Upanishads, whether the Gita, whether the texts like Yoga Vasishta, Ashtavakra Gita, the people who went there, Rama asked those questions which were relevant to his life, which were most important to his life. And when the teaching is over, the life of the recipient is transformed. When we have read a book, the person who is reading is so involved that his life gets transformed. It changes. When you are hearing a persons like Swami Ranganathananji or any persons who had reached that stage, if you listen to them, then your life can change its way, can be transformed. Generally, the saints and during their life, many of the people ask the relevance of the miracles that happen in their lives. They say that somebody walked on water, and a saint he made the wall walk. They were sitting on the walk. He was sitting on the wall, and he made that wall walk. These are all miracles. Are they relevant to us? No, they are not relevant. The relevant miracles are those which change these ordinary human beings into deeper sadhakas, and these deeper sadhakas into enlightened beings. And when we tune ourselves to ask these questions, observe, make our lives aware, make our actions conscious, when that happens, then you can be rest assured that you are on the path. That is, everything will be taken care of, and you will find that the journey which you have undertaken is so pleasant, so wonderful, and that you'll start enjoying going on this journey. When and whether you'll reach the destination or not, that will not be your botheration. Only joyfully walking this path, joyfully treading this path, walking this path will be your achievement, and rest of it will be nothing. That is, you learn how to observe yourself, you become conscious of your actions, and everything is wonderful. Joy comes in. You don't have to go in search of joy. I hope this was useful to you. Let us, as Sudhakarji said, let us start practicing. Let us start walking this path, and then we'll be able to derive the gems which we'll be able to learn the secrets which are given out by Vasishtha, and we don't have to explain them. We don't have to hear in the lectures or talks. We'll be able to understand them. You pick up a book like Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, read it. Every time you read one paragraph of his, Sri Ramakrishna, you'll find that it has got a deeper meaning, a better meaning. And every time you discover this newer aspect of that teaching, you'll find that you have been transforming, or you're in the process of transformation. I hope it was useful, and I'm so happy that I'm able to share something which I've thought it will be useful to you. Thank you so much.
The other day, we had a morning meditation session. Then one person asked the question, what do I get it by this meditation? Then suddenly somebody immediately said, you lose everything that you have. You become empty. There is nothing that you gain. You become empty. That itself is a grace. So like that, these questions and the yatra, I am sure that all of us will, the very first step, once you start taking it, life becomes much more joyful, much more blissful. On behalf of all of you, I say thanks to Raghuji for giving us tips to mold our own lives. Well, some may be very easy, some may be very difficult. Choose that which you are starting it. Whichever is the methodology that you want to adopt it. In the Yoga Sutra, it comes Satu Dirgha Kala Nairantarya Satkarya Sevito Druda Bhumihi. You keep on practicing it. The more you practice, the stronger you become in every aspect of your personality, in your being itself. I am sure these interactions with Raghuji will help us to go more within. It is an inward pilgrimage, inward journey. And let us come back with the questions which are closer to the home next week. We conclude with a prayer. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you.